Thank you all for coming today. My name is Chelsea DiGiuseppe. I'm the marketing manager for UNHInnovation. This year, our seminar theme is Women in Research and Innovation. And our aim with the content is to explore opportunities, challenges, and pitfalls of launching and running a research and innovation-based business, while also highlighting exemplary women in the field. So each seminar is led by an innovative female researcher or women who have founded or led research-based businesses. So before I introduce our speakers, I just want to say thank you to our generous sponsors. We have Hamilton Brook Smith Reynolds, a Boston-based full-service intellectual property firm. Saunders and Silverstein, a law firm in Amesbury, Mass. That provides services related to trademarks, copyright, internet software, and entertainment law. And Pierce Atwood, an award-winning multi-service regional law firm. We have a couple pieces of collateral out there, so check those out. Following today's presentation, we invite you to stay for appetizers and refreshments. Out here, our speakers will stay to continue the conversation. And we just ask that if you are under 21, you refrain from the beer. If you are an I-2 passport student, there is a check-in kiosk at the registration table where the name badges were, so make sure you swipe into that if you are here for that. All right, so I'm very excited to introduce our speakers this evening. We have Sharyn Potter and Jane Stapleton, who are the co-founders of UNH's first female-founded startup, Soteria Solutions. So in fact, I'm very excited to share that for the first time that Soteria just signed the licensing agreement with the university this week. So we are all really excited to see where they jump off from here. So Soteria is a spin-out of UNH's Prevention Innovation Research Center, also known as PERC, which Jane and Sharyn also co-founded. PERC has become internationally recognized for its collaborative research and community engagement focusing on sexual and relationship violence and stalking prevention and response. It's a mouthful. Our office has had the privilege of working with Jane and Sharyn for many years, promoting and protecting their work at PERC, and we are all really excited to see where they take Soteria. Thanks.
Great. Thanks so much. Hi, everyone. How are you? Great. Well, my name is Jane Stapleton, and I'm the Executive Director of Practice at Prevention Innovations Research Center, and I'm really happy to say that I am the co-founder of Soteria Solutions, and I'm also serving as the president of Soteria.
And I'm Sharyn Potter, and with Jane, I co-founded the Prevention Innovations Research Center. I'm the Executive Director of Research. I'm also a professor in sociology. I've been here for 20 years in that capacity. And with Jane and Jennifer, we've founded Soteria Solutions, and I am the Vice President of Research. Jennifer Scrafford is the Director of Operations. And then we have some of our amazing PERC colleagues, Taylor Flagg and Rebecca Ludick, who work with us day in and day out at the Prevention Innovations Research Center. So it's good to have them here.
So we actually thought that we would start telling you about Soteria Solutions by first telling you a little bit about Prevention Innovations Research Center. Because that's, I don't know if the story really starts there, but that's actually how Sharyn and I it's not the first project that we started working on together, but it's maybe been our most productive one so far. So Prevention Innovations works with faculty and students and staff. We work on colleges and universities across the United States as well as high schools. We've worked with the US military. And primarily through federal research funding, we develop and evaluate prevention and response strategies to end sexual and relationship violence and stalking. And I think while many of us think, well, it's the Me Too movement or it's Time's Up and this is really a new movement, we're really here to say that actually we've been doing this work for a really long time, and we actually are really well known for the work that we do. Prevention Innovations is made up of a core group of staff, some of whom Sharyn has just introduced you to, who are, again, federally funded or were funded through contracts. And then we work with amazing practitioners, so people who are in the field working to prevent and respond to sexual and relationship violence and stalking, and a number of faculty who are at UNH, as well as other colleges and universities, as well as researchers and scholars who are placed at other universities as well as federal agencies. So this is sort of where Soteria Solutions began, and we're really excited to tell you about the story of Soteria by telling you first about prevention innovations and the work that we do.
So Jane and I met a number of years ago, and with our other colleagues, we've all kind of been working in sexual violence prevention and response in some capacity. And both of you and I started in college. So it's been a long time. And I think what's really exciting is probably 5 or 6 years before Prevention Innovation started, we were really working together to think about shifting the paradigm of prevention. For years, sexual violence prevention and response really focused on talking at potential perpetrators and basically talking at potential victims. And what we are really leaders, and our colleagues and I at Prevention, and Jane at Prevention Innovations Research Center, is really shifting that paradigm and thinking about how do we take sexual assault, relationship violence, stalking, harassment, move it away from being a woman's problem, which many people thought about that for so long and still do, unfortunately, and making it a community problem and engaging the entire community as bystanders in both preventing and response. And we are really known as national and international leaders in developing bystander intervention and response strategies. And that's where we started. And from that little kernel, we've exploded. And right now, that is just one component of the work we do.
So I think the Chronicle of Higher Education really said it best, that what we really do is shift the paradigm from sort of looking simply at victims and perpetrators, or potential victims and perpetrators, to really beginning to think about how do we as a community, as members of either campuses or organizations or perhaps the military, how do we really come together to create the kind of environment that we seek to live, learn, and work in? And so we have recognition really around the country and outside of the United States and Canada for really leading the effort, both through our scholarship, our research, and the practical tools that we've developed for the field.
And all of our work is really grounded in a public health approach. And that really kind of goes with the communities. But for so long, when you look at a lot of public health interventions, they don't engage the target audience. There are people sitting in offices with fancy degrees deciding that this message is probably going to work. And unfortunately, that's probably not the best strategy. And what at Prevention Innovations Research Center is we've not only brought in the research, the public health, the literature, but the target audience themselves. Jane and I have been in all sorts of places in the middle of the night with our pizza and our chocolate and our soda, engaging the target audience. We've also been in legislators' office, corporate leader offices. So basically, we always say we know a lot about prevention, but we don't know your world. And in order to develop prevention strategies, we all need to collaborate together.
And so I think one of the really interesting things that's happened throughout our tenure in this work, and for both Sharyn and I, that's over 30 years each. What we've seen is really this cottage industry, which is developed to really kind of address a lot of what is now awareness of the problems of sexual harassment and assault. And what's interesting is that a lot of what's being sold in the marketplace right now, whether or not it's to colleges and universities or whether or not it's workplaces, are oftentimes really flashy products that actually have sometimes a fair amount of money invested in them, but they're not, as Sharyn has said, informed by the target audience, and they're not informed by research. And practitioners, those people who are implementing them, oftentimes don't inform them. So I think that's what, as the research center, really distinguishes our work from a lot of these other products that have been developed. And so we've been fortunate to have funding from the National Institute of Justice, the National Institutes of Health, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Office on Violence Against Women, the Department of Defense,
and some foundations.
Some foundation fundings to really develop a series of products which we'll tell you about briefly now and then talk about how we're sort of distributing them through Soteria Solutions. So just some of the products that we've developed, which again I think we're really well known for, are bringing in the bystander curriculum, which actually again we started to develop through National Institute of Justice funding in 2000. Really aimed at college and universities. Right now is being distributed in over 450 colleges and universities, really across the world, the majority of them in the United States, Canada, and the UK. We have Bring in the Bystander College, and then we had a CDC grant to adapt it for high school populations. So we have a high school version of the curriculum. We have developed through National Institute of Justice and Department of Justice funding the Know Your Power Bystander Intervention Social Marketing Campaign. And Sharyn and I actually were the co-developers of that, and it remains still the only evidence-based and research-informed bystander intervention social marketing campaign. We have a college version of it, and right now we're working to adapt it for high schools. Sharyn just finished a National Institute for Justice grant to develop a bystander intervention video game aimed at first-year college students, particularly men. And I think this is a really great example of how we were really looking to develop something that really met the target audience where they were at. And probably, by now it's probably like 12 years ago or 13 years ago, Sharyn and I were sort of sitting around one day thinking about like, well, what kinds of things could we develop? And now neither one of us are video game players, but we knew enough that at least the folks, college students, at least traditional age college students, actually were playing a lot of video games. And so we started to pitch the idea of developing a bystander intervention video game to a number of federal funders for research dollars. And I think it took like 4 rounds of the proposal until NIJ finally funded it. And so from that, we've developed 2 bystander intervention video games. One is called Mindfluck, and the other one is called
Ship Happens.
No, Ship Happens. I always forget that. And then, the really exciting, I think this is really exciting, and I think, Taylor and Becca actually have been really instrumental in helping us do this, and actually Sharyn and her team recently were at the NSF I-Corps. Was it a competition?
No,
or
no?
A national, right? And they were the only all-women team, and actually from UNH. I mean, go ahead. First team from UNH, and we developed USAFE US, which is a safety and prevention app, which is now being implemented on all 24 campuses in New Hampshire. And if we get the kind of funding that we have put out to continue the evaluation of it, hopefully we'll be distributing it both nationally to colleges and universities and adapting it for high schools. So we've been really fortunate, again, to have the research funding to develop these products that we're able to demonstrate that they're effective. And that really is what distinguishes the products that we've developed from many of what's available in the marketplace now.
So just a little bit more about Prevention Innovations Research Center. When Vice President Joe Biden came here in 2011, gosh, we'd been working together for more than 10 years, but he actually came to the University of New Hampshire to announce the amendments to Title IX, which basically told colleges and universities they have a responsibility to begin addressing and responding to campus sexual violence. And Vice President Biden came here because he was so impressed with the bystander intervention research that our team was doing at UNH. And subsequently, we were only one of 3 research centers that were tasked to do work as part of President Obama's White House task force to address campus sexual assault. And even though President Obama and Vice President Biden are not in office anymore, we are still called regularly by legislatures from around the country. And people call us, and it's so interesting to see them on CNN and then have them be on the phone in our office in Prevention Innovations. And I think we both get still starstruck. And Annie Custer had this great quote about us. And she said, what's important to me is having the cutting edge research from PERC to advise our work here in the Congressional Task Force to End Sexual Violence and to guide us as we move forward in public policy. So we feel really grateful to have that kind of recognition and support. And so this brings us to kind of where Soteria starts. So a number of years ago, I was Jane and I were crying in Maria Emanuel's office. And you didn't even have your daughter then, so because you just had 2 sons. So this is how far it is going back. And people were using Know Your Power without our permission, and they were doing things without integrity, without our permission. And Maria Emanuel says to the 2 social scientists, well, you need to trademark your work. And we're like, what? And she explained how if we started using and applying for registered trademarks, we would be able to protect the integrity. And this is really important because in all of our work, it's all student input. We use students as actors and models, and we feel very protective of them. So that was the beginning. And we worked with Chelsea and Timothy Benoit-Ledoux, who was really instrumental in getting us off the ground. And what the arrangement we worked out with the universities was we would begin to sell our licensed products. And the original authors, there's 7 of us, would be able to take a percentage of that royalty. And all of us thought, well, we don't want money for any of this. We just need money to pay participants to buy them pizza and to do the pilot research that's so expensive because it's really hard to get money for pilot research. So
it's even harder to get money for pizza.
Yes. Oh my God, with Muffin Gate, like the feds don't pay for food. So yes, so we're very creative on how we buy pizza. It's legal. So that was what we've been doing, and all of the money from the sales, our portion of it, the inventor's share, have been going back into Prevention Innovations Research Center, and that has been funding all of this great, amazing work that we've been able to do. And it's actually kind of got a little big for the university to handle, and we were driving the accounting office crazy. And so Mark Saddam kind of poked us towards starting an entity. We didn't want to start a for-profit entity, which is what the National Science Foundation wants you to do. And so after many long nights of discussion and lots of soul searching, we started a not-for-profit. And this is where the story of Soteria,
This is where Soteria
starts.
And it's sort of interesting. I know somebody asked me recently, so what does Soteria mean? And anybody take Latin or Greek in school? So Becca, how do we say, or what's the way to say it? Soteria is actually. So we went through a number of names to come up with Soteria Solutions, and we sort of brought our members together, and Mark Saddam did like a brainstorm with us, a little brain dump, and we landed on Soteria Solutions. So Soteria is the goddess of safety. And so somebody said to me, so who was her mother? And I said, well, Zeus was her father. And this person said to me, well, of course Zeus was her father. Zeus is everyone's father, but who's her mother? So her mother is Dionysius. And we really wanted to choose a name that represented what really was at the core of what we really intended to do. And that was to distribute evidence-based prevention strategies and to provide technical assistance that really was grounded in what we know works in prevention, evidence-based practice. And so Soteria Solutions was born really, maybe we had always intended that, you know, somewhere down the line we would start a company, but we didn't expect to do it so quickly. But we did it pretty quickly, actually. I mean, as far as getting it together, but really it represents years of work. And it really, despite the fact that many of our awareness is raised right now because of the Me Too movement and Time's Up, the reality is that we've been doing this work for a long time. And we feel fortunate to bring everything that we have learned to Soteria Solutions. So we really are sort of carrying on the work that we're doing, or that was born in Prevention Innovations, by really sort of working collaboratively with our partners. And our partners in Soteria Solutions are colleges and universities, high schools. We're working with a number of state agencies. We're working with a number of workplaces to really implement our evidence-based strategies, which again were developed at Prevention Innovations, as well as to develop some new strategies that will sort of come out of our work at Soteria Solutions. So we're doing training, we're selling our licensed products from UNH, we're providing technical assistance and consulting. And it's been a really interesting first 7-8 months. So the mission of Soteria is really to provide new and innovative approaches to addressing sexual and interpersonal violence and harassment, again, in colleges and universities, high schools, workplaces, the military, and sort of the general community.
And so, as Jane said, the past 8 months have been really crazy. And even in full disclosure, I was an accounting major and spent the beginning after college as a certified public accountant. That hadn't really carried forward. So Jennifer Scratchford, who's our Director of Operations, feel free to jump in, has really been leading the way on this effort. And Jane and I were talking, you know, all of this work is like a child to us, and to really be able to give it to kind of somebody and have them run with it in an organizational way, it's really about finding that right person and having trust in that person that they have your vision and have your compassion. And so we've been really fortunate to have Jennifer Scrafford in that role, and she's had to like deal with a few, you know, like it's been a lot of soul searching and a lot of really hard thinking. We've hired lawyers, bookkeepers, found office space, found a board of directors. We've had our first board of directors meeting.
Yeah, and I think, you know, it's interesting, like thinking about the transition of, so Sharyn and I are still full-time at Prevention Innovations, and we'll talk a little bit more about sort of balancing that. But it's interesting because when you work at the university, you sort of send things to the business service. This is like a great example. You send things to the business service center, and we have, you know, somebody in our office who is like the liaison, and we hand things to her and she takes care of it. But like when it's your business, it's like, we got to find, what's the difference between a bookkeeper and an accountant? Right?
And how much do they charge an hour?
And how much do they charge? And then actually when you get your reimbursement check and it only takes a week, you're just like, wow, this is really pretty cool. So like it's been a really kind of like a learning curve as far as what does it really take to run your business, and sort of like the layers of the business aspect, I guess, of UNH that I think a lot of us are insulated from if you don't work in the business center or you don't work in communications. Right? So it's like, oh, well, we need somebody to do our social media now and all of that stuff. And we need to make sure we're saying the right things. And so it's been, it's been a lot of work. And I think although maybe we don't, I know Sharyn's got this hidden skill of being a CPA, but I think, you know, we're sort of learning that like, okay, what things do you like to do and what things would you really rather not do? And who can we get to do them? And what's interesting is we just signed the agreement with UNH this week. Yeah.
And so with that said, we've kind of been in a holding pattern.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, so we've been really in a holding pattern because we've tried to keep like the work that transferred over maintaining, but we haven't really staffed up. We've been running like at a skeleton, Jennifer 25% time, and then we have 2 part-time employees that Jennifer 3 part-time employees that Jennifer oversees. And, you know, we've been waiting for all the agreements to be signed before we could really do anything, but we also wanted to make sure that everything that we had been doing didn't get lost. So it was this really kind of weird place. And I also feel like, you know, that we've tried to do everything with integrity, like we both are employees of the university, and Kevin, I saw Kevin Short come in, and when I talked to you at the UNH Innovations dinner, you know, you told me that you have to be very careful. You almost have to work double or extra hard so people understand that your startup isn't getting more attention than your real job at the university. And I took that to heart. I really appreciate that advice, and I think that's how the 3 of us have really it's like walking on a tightrope. So I basically, you know, and it's not uncommon for the Soteria, we have a separate Soteria email, and those emails come at like midnight or 2 in the morning. I wake up at 5 in the morning, and there's been like a little flurry of activity in the middle of the night. And so we've really tried to have like a wall between the 2 organizations. Would you add to that?
Yeah, well, and I think it's been really interesting too, because we need to account for our time, right? And so I know like some of the work that I've done for Soteria, like I need to take, because I'm a Ph.D. staff member, so I have needed to take like vacation time to do that because I need to account for my time in a different way. But I think that like this whole kind of like work-life balance and like the balance between the 2 workplaces is really kind of an interesting one, particularly thinking about being a woman-owned business. And one of the things that I wanted to say, particularly kind of going back to that industry, that cottage industry that's out there, is that there are, again, a number of companies that are selling products or that are doing training or doing speaking gigs. And it's predominantly, it's not exclusively, but it's predominantly women who are doing that work. And then there are sort of like some men, mostly kind of like speakers, like big name speakers. And it's really interesting to sort of like watch the attention oftentimes that those men get because they're... And the money, yeah, we were just talking about that because we know that they get really good money. And so it's been really interesting, particularly as we're sort of like pricing our, this is less about the products that we're selling that are licensed by UNH because we have you know, we have an agreement of how much we'll sell them for, but more so thinking about our other engagements, you know, how much are we charging for trainings and the consultations and the technical assistance, and thinking about really making our services and our consultations affordable, but also sort of like we are the experts, you know, those guys who are on stage literally making $10,000 an hour for an hour presentation, who are referring to our research, like they really make $10,000 for a speaking gig. So,
and they do it over and over.
And they do it over and over. And so we're sort of, you know, like it's been really interesting to sort of say to particularly clients that we know can pay, like this is what we charge. So it's been really interesting. And I think, you know, as predominantly, I mean, we do have a few folks that are our trainers who do not identify as female, so we are not kind of exclusively female as far as everybody we employ, but clearly we are led by women. And I think things that are important to us are, you know, making sure there is kind of that work-life balance. So, you know, today is a great example of that. We had planned to do something actually as Soteria for a few hours today, right? I had sort of like, I'm gonna be, you know, a half-day vacation, and it was sort of like, well, that got all messed up because guess what happened today? There was a 2-hour school delay, right? And some of us, almost all of us, have kids. So it's like, okay, well, we can't do that. So I think, we are very conscious of how do we make this work that we're really passionate about and that we know we're really good at and we know that people really want. How do we make this a place that we want to work at? And that's, I think, the really exciting thing about starting your own business is like we can decide how are we going to pay people? How much are we going to pay people? What are our office practices going to be? We can choose to pay for people's cell phones when, UNH has got this impossible policy that won't let you do it even though you pretty much just do work on your phone. Nothing against UNH, but I mean, it's like we make the rules. And I think, that's for me, that's really exciting.
And the other thing is that, I think in this whole kind of startup innovator craze, there's not women, and there's so many really cool things that women can bring to the table from all aspects, and that's not encouraged, that's not a model. And so, and the fact, and Rebecca was our lead at the National I-Corps in Atlanta last year, and, it just blew their mind that they kept saying, is it okay if she's the lead? And yes, she needs to be the lead. And it was, you mean this young woman? And we're like, yes, this is the leader of our project. And it was just this, right, this weird, like you were like this elephant in the room. And people still tell Mark Saddam about the woman team from UNH. And we shouldn't be an anomaly. And we have a really great product. We've had really great experience. We are still working with the NSF people, and they're encouraging us to move forward with our high school. So, and I think how do we, and also as a faculty member, what I do is not celebrated by the academy, but this is the next step of how we put research into people's hands that can actually use it. And how do we make that something that's celebrated and nurtured by universities? There's very few universities that think about those things when they consider promotion of faculty members, right? It's very much the traditional, you've got that article in an incredible journal that nobody reads, but it looks pretty on the bookshelf. And so, how do we shift that paradigm too, so that this incredible research is getting in the hands of people and actually doing something good in the world?
And that reminds me, actually, a couple of years ago, I was at a conference, and a woman by the name of Regina Dugan or Dunnigan, some of you might know her. She actually was the head of DARPA. I think, Mark, I had told you about her. Really interesting woman. She actually also was had a top administrative position at Facebook right after DARPA. But she talked about innovation within higher education, and she said that that innovation requires disruption, and how higher ed is like the antithesis of disruption, right? It's right. It's like you go to 4-hour meetings. Everything gets set in stone. Everything goes to a committee. There's a number of forms you have to fill out, and so I think sometimes that can be kind of weigh heavy on the creativity and the innovation. So I think we've been fortunate within Prevention Innovations to be kind of encouraged to really kind of step out of that sort of that rut of, no, you can't do that here. And Soteria Solutions has really allowed us to really sort of begin to create the boundaries of what's possible. And I think that's what's really, really exciting.
And this picture is from the theater where they give all of the awards that are not the big Emmy Awards.
The nominations.
The nominations.
For
all
the Emmys.
The Emmys.
Right.
And this was when we were there for Anita's Hills Time's Up commission. And it was an incredible experience.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it was really wild. It was really... yeah, that's a really big stage.
See how small we look?
And I think, this is actually kind of an interesting, I was sort of thinking about how, the metaphor in this, how gigantic this stage is, and the screen was just enormous, and how little we look here. But we had every right to be there, and I feel like even though we look little, we really were an enormous presence on that stage. We really were. So that's that feels really good.
So, do you want to talk about?
Yeah, so just kind of what is sort of Soteria's products right now. Bringing the bystander, both our high school and college curriculum. We're fortunate when we started Soteria Solutions, we sort of moved over essentially the end user agreements. And again, it's just been finalized, but the end user agreements that we had with colleges and universities, and we had just launched high school actually as we were starting Soteria. So we were fortunate that we had a client base already. We are really well known, so that's kind of our base. We have Know Your Power bystander intervention social marketing campaign. Again, we're beginning to do a high school adaptation of it. What we're beginning to really think about is what are our other products and services, and where are the needs, and that's really, we're beginning to sort of figure that out. So we're starting to do a number of consultations around technical assistance and support and coaching with executives, as well as kind of culture and climate assessments, because what we know both from our research but really in doing this work is that to prevent sexual and interpersonal violence and harassment, it requires culture change. We market ourselves as a company that partners with organizations who are really interested in changing their culture. So we are not about compliance. And there are plenty of products out there that promise compliance. So that is not what we are, and we're really clear with those that come to us and how we market ourselves. So we've been really fortunate to begin some engagements with organizations, again, that are really looking to do culture change.
And just a clarification, USAFE US is still at Prevention Innovations Research Center, because as long as we are be receiving evaluation grants for a product, that it still stays over at Prevention Innovations Research Center. When if USAFE US ever grows up and we're ready to release it, then it will get released to Soteria, but it's still in its adolescent stage and needs a little more help. And then this is just the last 8 months at Soteria Solutions. Here we are with Anita Hill. It was one of the most incredible experiences to meet her in person and hang out with her. At Tulane, they're using Know Your Power on one of their big campus boards. Our trainers, Caroline Lavia and Bobby Eckstein, are doing one of the very first trainings of the high school Bringing in the Bystander program. And Jane, is that you in there training new trainers? And that's okay. Yeah. So beginning to do some new trainings with our new trainers, right? Yeah.
So we've been busy.
In the middle of the night.
Yeah. And well, I was just going to say, just a really good example. Our trainers have just landed in LA today. Yep, they're doing a training at USC on Saturday. Big training. Jennifer just came back from Michigan. I mean, we've got a sort of a cohort of trainers that are on the road. And Jennifer, I don't know if you want to say anything about or add to.
Awesome. Yeah.
So here we are, happy as can be. So we welcome your questions, your thoughts. I think, what's really important to know is that we are standing in front of you, but really, Soteria is what it is today, really with the work of a lot of folks, and we're really excited to share the knowledge and the skills that we've gained, and to change the world. That's what we are. We're change the world kind of people.
And I feel like Prevention Innovations Research Center has really benefited from like incredible students, and they've gone out in the world. And Taylor and Rebecca are two people who are students who started with us, and then we wouldn't let them leave. And we've had other students who have stayed with us for a while and gone on to do other things. But this semester we have 6 interns at Prevention Innovations Research Center, so I think like that's a really huge part of our mission. And you even have 2 interns for Soteria Solutions, and again, we keep that very separate as well. They can eat lunch together, I think.
So we'd welcome your comments or your questions.
Chelsea. So I know you're still building up momentum right now, but what's one thing that you have taken away, like a lesson learned that you would like to share at this point with other potential founders or innovators about starting up?
It's really complicated. Right?
Yeah, it is. That is not what I will agree with Sharyn. It is. There is much more to it than, it's not just like, oh, let's just start a business. It's like, it is pretty complicated, and it takes time. But yeah, it is. There's a lot to do. What I was going to say is, I would encourage people to think big, to not sort of limit yourself. I mean, and I think maybe that's bad advice because you don't want to think so big that you aren't able to focus. But I think that, in order to really kind of, and I guess time will tell, to make it for the long run, because we don't anticipate that this is like a 1 or 2 year gig, right? This is hopefully going to live on beyond us, is to really think big. And I think that that's kind of why we're here right now. I mean, it really was 13, 14 years ago that we were like, let's develop a video game. And then we were like, what video games do you know how to play? It's like, well, I play Pac-Man. It's like, but we didn't have to know how to create the video game. What we needed to know is, how do we find somebody who can help us develop a video game? And then we know the students are got to inform it, and we need to test it with them. But it's sort of being able to say, what's the next thing? And then how do we get there? So that's what I sort of mean by thinking big, is don't limit yourself.
Can you give a little bit of overview of like what some of those things do? Like, what does USAFE US compute with?
My ambassador. I've got 2 ambassadors.
Oh, here she comes with it. Everybody take out your phone.
Yes. All of you should take out your phone and download USAFE US. It's free to download, free to use. Like Jane and Sharyn said, it's available at all the colleges in New Hampshire, including the community colleges. And basically what it does, you can tell I say this literally all day, every day, over and over again. Basically what it does is it helps students get out of uncomfortable situations and also connect them to local resources on and off campus. So everyone's favorite feature is Time to Lead. It will actually send you a fake phone call or a text appearing as someone in your contacts. And you can set it on a timer or have it go off automatically. I have my mom as the default because no one questions when a mom calls. So I can play it. It looks like my mom is calling me, but when you answer it,
hey, can I talk to you right now? I need your help.
so if someone were being possessive and overall creepy, I could just, and I was feeling uncomfortable, I could say, oh, my mom's calling me, gotta go, and discreetly leave the situation. That's by far our students' favorite feature, and we learned that because in the process of evaluation, we did focus groups with hundreds of students across the state, and they told us they tend to get in situations where they feel really uncomfortable, but they wouldn't want to call 911 for that. And there's other features, so you can discreetly alert a bartender or a bouncer if you're feeling uncomfortable with a fake drink recipe. And there's also
That basically says I need help.
yes, it says I'm uncomfortable. Can you get me out of here? So you can go up to a bartender, say, hey, can you make me this drink? It signals to them that the student needs help.
And we're working with the Liquor Commission, right? You all
Yes.
are going to be going around with the Liquor Commission on Saturday nights interviewing bartenders.
And then there's also the ability for campuses to customize all the local hospitals, police centers, campus Title IX, everything. Students can contact them directly from their phones. So it's a great resource. You should all download.
I have a suggestion.
Yeah.
So when I was thinking about this when we were talking about what it does, and a very easy thing to add to it would be something that at the time and location logs who's being uncomfortable. So we just got that thing from the president saying, are there places on campus that you feel uncomfortable, whatever. Wouldn't it be nice if you just could walk and say, right now, this is not the most comfortable place, and then you just keep track of those things, and you can say, based on real reports, these are areas of concern.
Yeah, and there are actually, I don't know that we have plans to do that, but we actually are really connected to a network of researchers around the country, and NIJ is actually funding some researchers at the University of Washington to be sort of like to almost like mapping.
But it's simple
Yeah.
to add to something.
Yeah.
I think it's also something that we would definitely focus through.
Yeah.
So like a lot of people come to us with ideas like, wouldn't this be great to add to the
Right.
app? And we're like, yeah, it sounds like a great idea. And then we talk to students and they're like, nah. So it's kind of like our experience has really been, like Jane and Sharyn have said, you have to go to the target audience or no one's going to use your product.
But it seemed like if you felt uncomfortable, the time to record it is right then, that time, applications, right?
Have to ask students.
Yeah, and we'll go to, and when we first came up with the idea for the app, we thought it would just be enough to have all sorts of resources if you or your friends were in danger or had a horrible situation happen to you. And they basically said, oh, we don't need that. Nothing bad's going to happen to us. And it was all the focus grouping that said, the student said, well, we would download an app if there's something in it for us. And that's what where Time to Leave, the prevention tools came from. So
But thanks for your suggestion.
Yeah.
I mean, I think
we'll go to the students with that because we have a whole bunch of focus groups scheduled this semester.
We'll add it to the list.
Yeah.
It does seem like having multiple separate apps, no one's going to go download that app.
Right.
Right.
No, yeah.
If-
True.
If it's in your app built in, you just hit a button.
Yeah, and maybe
Levels of
administrators, that
comfort.
would be a sell to them. Yeah.
Do you know how many users
After 8
you have?
months, have you discovered any pros or cons of being not-for-profit, or what factors led it to that decision in the first place, and did they end up panning out?
Yeah, so that was a really difficult decision because you're much more, it's much easier to secure like the SBIR funding and all of the federal funding for small businesses if you're a for-profit. And when we were at I-Corps last year, this was an ongoing conversation. So, but we also felt that we couldn't, ethically, we couldn't be not a for-profit doing the technical assistance, providing the prevention strategies we do. So I think this was Mark's suggestion. Someday along the way, we might have a for-profit that comes off of Soteria Solutions. If maybe USAFE is able to get SBIR money, we have a preliminary SBIR application out. So, but right now, I think we didn't feel comfortable being a for-profit for what we were kind of essentially beginning to move over and expand.
And I think that doesn't, it's interesting, what are the differences between a for-profit and a not-for-profit? And so, clearly we know that, it has a lot to do with, who really owns you and what does it mean to be a nonprofit. I think that it definitely doesn't mean that we're not making money or that the people, hopefully once we employ people full-time, because we don't have, right now we do not have full-time employees. Right,
And
so
they don't
that's,
have benefits.
and
I
they
was
don't have
thinking about
benefits.
SBIR,
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Which you're passing up, I guess.
Yeah, but I think, again, thinking big, we knew we wanted to start with a nonprofit.
You can always do that later
Right.
as the.
Right.
Good.
Sharyn, I think you said this, that you and Jane are an anomaly, women starting a company and moving space, and I think you're both very inspirational. Like, just having you up here today sort of is that example that maybe will pay it forward to someone else and be inspiring. But do you have any thoughts about how it can make you less of an anomaly, or what it would take for more women to take the leap and try this themselves?
I think we need to know about opportunities. We need to be encouraged. I think about all the startups that, like, you think about the teenage boys and the college boys that just start because they can. And Taylor, I hope I'm not gonna disclose, she got off a conversation with somebody and she said, I just channeled a white man in a suit at a board table, and this is what I told him. And it worked. But she came into my office to tell me that. So I think, like, as women business people, I think there needs to be a paradigm shift there. Because I hope that's okay, I shared that.
Yeah, totally fine. I'm happy to admit that.
And it worked. And I think you've, like, really learned that, like, how assertive you have to be. And I think as women, and we've really had to be really assertive, and even building Perk at the university.
Yeah. And I think, I think that we have needed to really claim the space that's rightfully ours. And I think that that's kind of the takeaway. And like when we started Prevention Innovations, and again, we started Prevention Innovations technically in 2006.
Yeah, before 2005.
Right. All right, 2005.
I won't even tell you what grade I was in.
Yeah, I know. And we started it because at the time, and again, this is like a long time ago, and we might think like, oh, this is like the pinnacle of awareness around sexual assault and harassment. But like in 2005, we had been doing the work for over a decade.
Right.
And what we saw happening was there were all of these kind of like vendors and some very like high-placed, well-paid men who
were taking our work.
Who were not only taking our work, but they were sort of like positioning themselves to be the expert. And we came together in 2005 and said, basically, we know we're the experts. We're among experts, but we know that we are sort of the experts in this field. And if we don't start calling ourselves the experts, then somebody else is going to.
And then in 2006,
Right.
we went to the institution, and somebody said it would be really cool to have a research center run by young women, because we were young at the time.
Well, there are also no research centers run by women.
Or started by women.
Right.
And that's unfortunate. We just took our yes and ran out of and then we became a recognized research unit in 2006. And then with Mark and Chelsea and Tim Benoit-Leduc's, I never can say his name, we were able to apply for a grant where UNH recognized us as a research center. But that was like 2012. It was like 7 years later, 2013.
Yeah. So I think to get to your, back to your point, I think, what can we do to encourage more women to do this? I think it needs to sort of like start really, I know that we're college, but we need to really kind of start this really very young with girls sort of like claiming their space. And I think, with boys kind of like working side by side with them. And I think at the university level, we need to really encourage women to sort of claim their space, and not just in token ways. And we need to sort of look at what are the barriers. Like, it was really hard to do this. It was really hard.
And it's also like a lot of personal sacrifice. Like my daughters will tell you that Prevention Innovations and USAFE are the more loved children. And they're very vocal about it. And so it is like, like it is the middle of the night. It's like somebody will call us on a Friday and say like, we're putting out this RFP and we want it on a Monday. And, Jane and I and, Jennifer and whoever will spend the whole weekend texting and, I'll have to be to like my family. I know I was supposed to do this with you this weekend, but I'm not. And I think it's hard, but we've done it.
Well, and I was just going to add to that, like everything we do is sort of for the first time. So every time we submit a proposal, it's like you write this proposal and you're like, oh, well, where's the template? There is no template. You don't have a letterhead. You don't have a PowerPoint slide. And so you create this proposal that, and then you up it a little bit, right? And a little bit more because you have the ability to put this out in the world. And I think like we try to support each other, like, these ladies inspire me every day, and sort of we try to bolster. And so I think as women, you support each other, you take risks, and you put it out in the world. Maybe before you're completely comfortable, but I think, and then you get that email back that says like, "Let's talk," and it's the best feeling in the world.
Yeah, it is the best feeling in the world. Yeah.
I was just going to say also, I think that role modeling and mentoring are especially important. Like Jane and Sharyn were saying, we do have a great group of interns. I mean, one of the reasons that I chose to stay at Prevention Innovations after I finished up my graduate degree here was because I was surrounded by women who were like so strong, and I saw the success, and really having that mentorship is what helped me like stay at Prevention Innovations. And every semester our interns say the same thing. I'm so happy to have worked in a place with so many like strong women who are determined to end this issue.
And Becca's a really, she started out like as an intern, and now she's like totally managing and developing the whole intern program, which is like really cool to watch that too. And it's an amazing intern program. And I think we keep getting more and more applications because the word on the street is really good.
Yeah, and I mean, like a lot of our interns aren't super confident when they first apply. They're like, a research center? I don't know if I'm like a good fit there. Like, I don't know if that's something I can do. And we just kind of continue to encourage them, like, yes, you can do it. Try it out. Well, if you don't like what you're doing, we'll switch you and have you do a different task, something that you like better. We are just very responsive to the students as much as we can be.
I think she hit it exactly. I think it's confidence. Everything you said is really confidence, and men are more confident because we don't care. Right? It's like whatever, go try it, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like women are more reserved. They're not as confident about it. And it took a lot for her to basically say, it's a great idea, but it may not meet our criteria, right? I mean, that's confidence, and that's why you put her in place. And I think that's huge for people getting out there, just getting the confidence. And if it takes a group to do it, then it takes a group to do it. Mm-hmm. Teams are always stronger, so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I will say there is like one part of me that like kind of remembers that statement that Regina Dugan said, though, is that like innovation requires disruption. And like I've been at UNH since 1986. I did my graduate work here and I never left. And like there are some things about this institution, and I think many other colleges and universities, that are very grounded in this is the way we do things, this is the process, and you gotta buck the system to make shifts, right? We see that all the time, right? Like change is really necessary for growth. And so I think making more growth opportunities is really important.
Will you permit me to come up and say nice things?
Can we get it on tape?
That's exactly why I'm coming up. So there are a couple things. Is for the audience, it's interesting that it is a predominantly female audience. And so when you said you want to bring women forward along with men, they're not in the room, which happens a lot when you talk about these issues. So it's just kind of interesting to think about what it would mean to have men in the room. And it's not because I'm saying they should be in the room, but it's you get this dichotomy seen as a word. Seen as a word.
Well, and we have just so I just want to say that we have had men who have been and are really supportive of our work. You know, men in our personal lives. You know, on our board of directors. Yeah. So. Yeah,
interns even.
Yeah, we've so I just want to make sure folks know that.
And this is one of the challenges, right? You make an invitation like this, we have you come and talk about what was a really challenging experience to date, and you know the room self-selects. And one of the big challenges is how do you get the room not to self-select the way that it currently has. But for everybody else, I think a couple things. You have no idea how hard this was for them. Like, they were being really nice about, and I'm talking about a system that's not meant to do this in scholarship, a system that has a hard time doing it anyway. You know, the UNH wants to do these things. I want to do them desperately, and there's so many tailwinds that happen, or headwinds that happen to try to get this stuff done. So even with best intentions, stuff is really hard. It's hard on your personal life. It's hard on your social life. It's hard on your work, how you work in departments. So you have no idea what they've had to go through to just get to today, even to the point where, you know, we had the license done. And I said, well, let's just wait 3 days, just in case something else weird happens. It wasn't because we weren't committed to doing it. It was just because the system itself tries to find ways to say, are we really sure? And so the statement that you made about the courage to do these things is really important. And so it's not, we'll try to make it easy, but it's never going to be easy. And for people in the room, you know, this is how it's supposed to be done. And so what I wanted to say to both of you, the three of you, because Jennifer's not up here, but you're right here, is I cannot express how much gratitude I have to you for the process that you went through, that you showed patience when you shouldn't have, or maybe we didn't deserve it. That you were open to advice in places, and sometimes really challenging advice that was, you know, kind of uncomfortable to take. That there was, at least I hope, you know, a level of trust throughout the process that we were going to get there. And, you know, it was give and take on either side. But, you know, it was great for me, not that this is about me, it's about you, to just kind of walk through that process and know we were going to get there. Never had any doubts that we wouldn't finish the thing. And I would say that, you know, for you and for the camera and for everybody at UNH, I look at what you've done as the example of how to do it, of how to do it right. Hopefully we do it faster next time. We do it a little bit better next time. But it was the best example I've ever had of trying to get a startup out of the university. And so I just wanted to say that in front of a lot of people. We want Becca to not be the unicorn that she is in those rooms. And so, you know, for the women in the room, you know, it's possible. And so it's kind of, so a lot of the stuff that you've done has really influenced and inspired me in the other work that I do about diversity and inclusion and about how you say these things. So what I'm going to say to you all is something that I was told that you have to say, which seems silly because guys don't, this doesn't work. This is for you. This type of experience is for you. Starting your own thing, doing your own business, taking your idea. It is expressly for you. And you've got great examples of people here who have done it, and it's harder than it should be. The only way it gets better is for all of you to try, and for all of you to pick the thing that you're passionate about and that you want to do, and try to bring that forward and be as courageous and indefatigable as this group, because that's actually what it takes to do it right. So I just want to thank you for the process of it. It's great. Yeah. Now I'm done.
I noticed one of our faculty fellows, Jennifer Griffith, is here from the Paul School. And one of the things at Prevention Innovations Research Center is what Jane said at the beginning. We're lucky enough to have faculty both from UNH and around the country in Canada. And we were so lucky that, to meet Jennifer last year. And we've been doing a really cool project with Jennifer that hopefully you'll hear about in April, right?
It's been on my pleasure.
Yeah, so it's so we just feel really fortunate to have like really incredible colleagues.
That's probably time.
Okay. Perfect.
Thank you guys so much.